Hi, this is Ashish R. Bedekar and welcome to my podcast, The ARB Show. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Shreyasi. She is the founder and CEO of Harappa Upgrad. She has over 18 years of combined experience across broadcast and print journalism, editorial leadership for entrepreneurship and business reportage, book writing, teaching, higher education, administration, and education entrepreneurship. And those were some of the skills which she leveraged to build and start Harappa. Harappa is an online learning platform that helps professionals drive career success using 5 skills, essentially essential set of cognitive, social, and other skills. For example, logical reasoning, service orientation, etc. Welcome to the show, Shreyasi. As we discussed, we have the format in the show where the guest talks about top 5 areas or tips in a specific domain of their expertise. And with that context, it would be great if you could talk about top 5 benefits of soft skills. And that would be very helpful to the audience. Over to you, Shreyasi.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for having me on the show. Delighted to be here and to be in conversation. Soft skills is in some way, very small word, but I think a very, very important area of understanding and of impact that I think certainly professionals and enterprises need to understand. And while we say soft skills, and at Harappa we never really like to call them soft skills because we feel like these are actually the hardest skills to learn, the hardest skills to practice, right? And the hardest skills to really demonstrate and apply. People know soft skills from all kinds of names. People call them leadership skills, success skills, future skills, what else? Professional skills. I think that entire gamut and range of skills that people call easily with soft skills is really at what we at Harappa call thrive skills, and which is maybe not as accessible and easy to understand as soft skills, but the real intention is that these are the skills that both individuals, teams and organizations need to truly thrive, not just survive working lives, but to truly thrive. And essentially, the way to think about it is that these are skills that are above and beyond the domain and the functional and technical skills that you do. So these are skills that a computer scientist needs, or a podcast producer needs, or an HR manager needs, or a data scientist needs, beyond whatever it is that they do in terms of data science or computer science or HR ops or supply chain management, whatever. At Harappa, even before I start talking about the benefits, it's important to say, help understand what we mean by these soft skills. At Harappa, we believe that these thrive skills are essentially across 5 broad categories, right? Which is essentially in categories of excellence, as we call them. It's about how you think and can you think better, how you solve problems and how can you solve problems better, how you communicate and how to do that better, how you collaborate and work with others, and lastly, how do you lead yourself, lead others, and now, as particularly in the world that we're in, lead through change and lead against change, right? So really what soft skills or thrive skills, as we prefer to call them, are all your thinking skills, solving skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, and leadership skills, right? So now one of the biggest benefits, I think, of having soft skills, if we were to think about the think, solve, collaborate, communicate, and lead, is let's focus on the first benefit of thinking better, right? Now, and within that, it's about how do you think critically, but also how do you think creatively, how do you think logically, but also how do you learn to listen to your instincts and your judgment. How do you think about ideas is different from how do you think about people. How you think for scanning breadth of a subject is very different from how you think when you want to go into the depth of a topic. How do you think when lots of ideas are jumbled up in a concept or a conversation or a debate or a discussion, and how you disaggregate them into small pieces. And sometimes in brainstorming sessions there are lots of little ideas. How do you converge them together into one coherent whole? I think people don't often think about the fact that we think at very different levels, right? And we're thinking for very different purposes in our lives as a professional. Sometimes we think to disaggregate, sometimes we think to synergize, sometimes we think logically and rationally, right? Sometimes we think creatively and expansively. So one of the biggest benefits of soft skills is that it's actually at the very heart, it is cognitive skills. It is skills that make your mind think better. So one big benefit is you will think better. You will be less cluttered in your thoughts, and also you will be able to generate better ideas. So that is one of the biggest benefits of soft skills.
Got it. So when you say thinking clearly is in itself, man is a thinking animal. So it's a very fundamental to our existence, as you rightly mentioned. And so specifically, do you recommend some kind of a test, or you recommend some kind of a structured programs for increasing this capability of kind of thinking, or it is more like a case study wherein participants would talk about, okay, this is what is the scenario, and then you kind of step back and say, okay, these are the kind of possible ways to think about it. So what's the role and how does this work?
This is essentially pedagogy. The question that you're asking me is what are the pedagogical approaches we apply at Harappa to help professionals learn? At Harappa we work with essentially adults, right? 90% of our learners are between the age group of 28 to 50, 55, which is essentially a workplace. Our conviction and our belief is that busy professionals learn best through what we call cohort-based blended learning journeys, where actually, you need a variety of pedagogical formats rather than one single format to keep people engaged and to mix up, information in different formats for, people's minds to be able to process it. Because, otherwise we could have just given a 2,000-page book on thinking. We know that nobody is going to read that. So our programs at Harappa have some portion which is asynchronous or self-paced videos, as we call them, which is on a platform. Then we also have online live sessions when we get the cohort together to work with the Harappa faculty and facilitators, so that learning can happen from peers sharing, because as I said, these are adults. They're sometimes very, very successful professionals. Adults learning from each other can have a great benefit, or listening to each other, as well as from faculty. And then many different kinds of pedagogical formats, like pre-assessment to post-assessment, how some learners' attitude was about a certain topic before they began the program to after they began the program, feedback from their managers that goes into the program, little practice quizzes. We are big believers in reflection exercises, guided reflection. If I just tell someone, hey, open a piece of paper and start writing a diary, it's very, very tough. But if we were to give easy but thoughtful, simple but super thoughtful question prompts to say, hey, in the last 1 week, think of a time when you were when you experienced a feeling of flow, or think of a time when you felt you were very defensive, or think of a sentence someone told you in the last 3 days which you felt really energized you over. So guided prompts and very thoughtful reflection. Okay. So we mix up all of that in our training program.
Got it. That's a nice summary. So what's the second benefit in your view?
I think one of the most important benefits is, as professionals in the workplace, we really are called in, or we're all paid to solve problems for the company or on behalf of the company. Now, that problem could be expanding audience for your podcast, or that problem could be hiring the right tech people, that problem could be launching a new product, that problem could be creating a brand for, all kinds of everyday work problems. But understanding, defining problems, first seeking problems out, right? Are you a professional who can anticipate and identify and articulate a problem to yourself and to others around you even before that problem occurs, right? Are you a person who can generate the best multiple solutions and approaches to solving a problem? Are you the right person who can then, from the available options there, choose the right one? Are you a person who can then convince different stakeholders for which approach or option you have you have identified to be the right? There are a lot of steps in problem solving. We very glibly say, hey, you should be a good problem solver, but there's so many parts of being a good problem solver. Are you a good problem identifier? Can you define the problem clearly? Can you communicate in time to everyone who needs for it to be communicated? Can you generate the right possible solutions? Can you finally build consensus on the solution you want to execute? And then how do you plan to execute it? So the second benefit of soft skills is really this, the cognitive consequence of this problem solving, and really understanding that problem solving has multiple steps, and therein lies a lot of power. If you're able to break down something which you're supposed to intuitively solve a problem, it's very powerful for learners when they say, okay, I actually jumped to solve a problem before defining it, right? Oh my gosh, I wish I could have identified the problem. I couldn't identify it unless it actually hit me in the face, and which is when firefighting happens. So good soft skills make you better problem solvers. So that's the second benefit.
Right. I'm reminded of the one of the experts who said that, in our education, we are always conditioned to answer specific questions, right? But what is also important is to ask the right questions, right? And that's
yes.
So once you start asking the right questions, answers that follow. That's very well. Moving on to the third benefit, which you would like to share.
I think third is the one that most people most strongly associate with soft skills, which is that you speak better. For most people, soft skills is good English language speaking skills, right? I am actually hopefully expanding the definition of soft skills, or thrive skills as we call them, for your listeners, by saying, hey, actually they're very cognitive also, which is what the first two things I spoke about, think and solve. But communication, which is what most people associate with soft skills, I feel like communications is such an important attribute to have in your working life. For a professional, you're constantly communicating, and as in more, we're using technology, hybrid, it's actually the way that we communicate, including written communication, has actually become more important than ever before, right? Even in written communication, we are sometimes communicating across multiple mediums, something informal like WhatsApp to something more formal like email, to multiple to something very, very public, but you want to be kind of informal like LinkedIn. The range of formats on which we are expected to communicate, even in a written format, right? And the range of expectations on it, from formal to urgent and quick, which is WhatsApp, to thoughtful and more formal, which is email, to informal yet correct and formal and it's so public like LinkedIn. I think today's professionals need to really, really improve their communication skills, including written and of course oral as well, because that's when most people experience us, and most people experience or perceive our expertise, perceive our trustworthiness, perceive our charisma, really through the way that we speak, right? And even a 5%, 7%, 10% improvement in that can sometimes unlock very, very unexpected opportunities and can become a very strong lever and advantage and asset for professionals to accelerate their career trajectory. So both the ability to speak more confidently and the ability to write more accurately are very, very important benefits of soft skills. And I'll add three more elements of communication that most people don't think about. I think of listening and reading are very, very important, because speaking and writing are when you're disseminating the information or the ideas or the thoughts you want, and listening and writing is how you collect the information, right? Reading through data to listening to clues, all of that. And the last one is body language, right? Like how are you perceived through your non-verbal communication? Like I move my hands so much that makes people feel I'm very passionate, or I'm very engaged, or I'm really interested, or I'm just like this person who is active and has a lot of energy, right? So I think the biggest benefit of soft skills is this ability to communicate across all of these elements of writing, speaking, listening, reading, and body language much better. It has a massive impact on your career.
Right. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Another aspect which also is interesting and needs to be focused is when you are dealing with an international audience, right, on business, etc. And typically when you have got content-rich or context-rich cultures, so depending on that, you need to change the tonality, change the composition. It's a very simple thing. For example, they are always, given to understand that, in your presentations, you have to be brief, not more than 10 slides. The slide shouldn't be very busy. But it's the opposite when you want to present to Japanese audience, right? It has to be busy, full of information, maybe 50 slides in his less, very interesting point. Let's move to the fourth.
And when you begin, and from that's so true. And from a context and content rich, and actually even in the same culture at different points, the purpose for which we communicate keeps changing even in our work life every day. Like right now, my purpose is to hopefully be engaging and inspiring and informative, right? I was just coming off from interviewing someone where the purpose of communication was very different. So then you have to understand, hey, do I, start with all the details and then build to a bigger picture? Or do I start with a bigger picture, which is at the end of a strategy conversation, we will do this and then go through the detail? These are all communication choices. As professionals, we are asked to make very many communication choices about what is the tone, what are the word usage. So it's a very, very alive, everyday skill that is needed.
Right. So let's move to the fourth benefit.
The fourth one is, of course, the collaborate, and that's working with people. Very few of us are so gifted that it's just us and our ideas and we will do magic in the world. I think most of us need to work with people and need to work through people to really be able to achieve anything of significance and meaning, both for ourselves and whatever mission, idea, or enterprise we are connected to. And it's always surprising to me that, there's a whole science, of group dynamics, of what happens when human beings come together. What are the multiple dynamics and subtext and context at play when human beings work together. But we really don't study that. And then we're put into teams trying to do very, very important things without really even very base understanding of how groups of human beings behave, right? A lot of anthropological, a lot of sociological dynamics that influence our behavior, right? And we don't understand, like if you and I were to work on something important together, you bring so much of your upbringing, so much of your exposure, so much of your life experience into the way that you like to work, the way that you end up working. Same here, but we don't really think about and talk to each other about those things. So in collaboration, working with people obviously is tough, and it can't be templatized, right? You almost have to, again, like your communication style, you also have to adapt the way that you work with everyone to all the important people that you work with closely, right? And there's so many things that can go wrong between human beings when we work together. One is we're not in sync on our why. We've both not articulated our real purpose, right? That could lead to misalignment. We are great at working together, but we are both really bad at navigating conflict. The first instance of conflict happens, there's a rupture and break in our relationship, right? we trust each other, but we don't know how to rebuild trust, right? There are many, we don't know how to inspire each other. If you don't understand my why, you don't understand me and my motivations, you won't be able to inspire me, right? Because you have to. So I think all of the dynamic exchange between team members, human beings, is to do with all the collaboration. So we have courses like establishing trust, navigating conflict, so much on delegation, giving people feedback, right? How do you take feedback? How do you give feedback? A lot of this is what soft skills will help you do better. And of course, as much as communication, this is the second huge benefit. If you can get better at decoding people and understanding how to work better with them, of course it has huge benefits to your life in general.
Right. Because as someone said, every business is a people business.
Yes.
So unless you are dealing with robots all the time, but nevertheless, coming to the final benefit, what would you like to be the grand benefit which you would like to disclose?
I think the grand benefit is understanding yourself, leading yourself. I think really adult, and I think spiritual gurus will say this, leadership curriculum says this. The real challenge of adulthood is knowing what you want. And nobody, we can tell our children, our parents could have told us, but really in full adulthood, understanding your own mind, truly understanding what you want, truly understanding, what will make you happy, what do you signify. I think, the definition of success is so different for each one of us, right? But do we really even forget me understanding your definition? Do I really understand what my definition of success is? And do I really understand who I am? What actually comes naturally to me, what actually makes me joyous, what actually drains my energy, what I'm actually bad at but I should improve. I feel like we don't do enough self-work, right? And really the greatest mystery of the world as we're put into the world to operate in is understanding your own mind and your own heart, and which is what we say, leading self. You have to know before you can lead anyone else. You have to know and lead yourself, and that is a very internal journey. But it can be a very structured journey. People think all of this is like, hey, it's not possible, I was born like this. All soft skills are highly learnable. Fine, you might not be able to be an orator at the level of Barack Obama. You don't need to. You're not going to be the president of the United States. But can you become a much better orator than you are right now? Can you become a much better writer? Can you become much more in sync with yourself? Can you become better at handling conflict? Of course, at any age, these things you can become better at. So the last benefit is knowing yourself. And what better, I don't even know if success can be achieved. A true success can be achieved without somebody being blind to their own self. It's not the funnest way to live.
So I think that was a very fine summary. So essentially, it's all about becoming a better version of yourself every day, right? With everyday progress, move ahead.
Yes.
So, interestingly, can you share any aha moments, because when you had many clients so earlier might be skeptical about soft skills or 5 skills, and then they came back and say, wow, Shreyasi, this opened our eyes. Any interesting stories which you would like to share?
Thankfully that happens so often. I think everybody thinks first. See, what are people skeptical about when it comes to soft skills or thrive skills, as we call them? One is, hey, these can't be learned, right? Like, these are innate skills, learn on the job. Actually, our biggest enemies is people's misplaced notion that this can just be learned on the job. No, it's a structured skill that is much better. It can be learned on the job. As an educator, I will never say that nobody can learn this way. That's not true. The human mind is a mysterious, enigmatic thing, right? Anything can happen. But I think the biggest skepticism is that you don't learn on the job, that there is a structured approach. And then, especially on one of our very popular programs is the first time manager program. We see our enterprise partners really like that program, because the journey from being an individual contributor to the time when somebody becomes a manager for the first time is really tough on the person who's gotten this promotion, is obviously tough on their direct report, and it's tough obviously on the company as well, because it's not as natural a progression as we imagine. To be a good data scientist is very different from being a manager of data scientists, right? And I think on that program we routinely and within that program also is very simple thing like giving feedback, right? It sounds like such a simple thing. Most people and most professional relationships, I feel, are damaged in the process of giving and receiving feedback, because either people become too personal, or people think their values, I'm very forthright, I'm very blunt, I speak the truth. Yeah, you speak the truth, but you end up hurting the other person, and their trust breaks, right? So I think the one thing that we've really heard from some of our clients is within our first time manager program, the ability, the skill of giving feedback. They're surprised at how intuitive, but also how possible it is to teach people how to give better feedback, and that's been wonderful to hear.
Great, that's nice. Now, any use of AI which you'd like to share? Because I'm sure when you can have like hyper personalization, so any story you would like to share about how you are using AI at Harappa?
So we have two platforms at Harappa. So the programs that I was telling you about, which is the cohort-based blended learning programs, happen on one platform, which includes, like Zoom links for the live sessions to all of the multiple formats I spoke about. We also have another platform which is called Thriversity, which is really a learning library where all of our asynchronous and self-paced content is kept, right? Now that has, hundreds of hours of content on Thrive Skills. There we have built a Thrive bot, as we call it, where you can go and type, have to give feedback to my manager, who I'm not getting along with, or my manager doesn't trust me, and I want to tell them, and I want to tell them why this is not okay or whatever. What our bot will do is actually be able to pull out from across our courses, on communication to knowing yourself, to the feedback module, and be able to send you snippets and ideas on exactly this question. And then it can ask you then to say, hey, which of these three is more important to you right now? Which one should I go on? So they can, you can have a whole learning journey. And I call it almost like the OPD or emergency ward of a hospital. When we go in, when, you're not feeling well, and you just go in, when you don't have to go to a specialist surgeon, right? You're just like an OPD. So the Thrive Board is a great, you don't have the time to wait to learn the whole course, but you need a problem to your immediate solution, because your feedback conversation with your manager is tomorrow, and you need to give them some tough feedback, and you're giving feedback upwards. You need some quick clues on how to do that. The Thrive Bot is a great learn today, apply tomorrow emergency OPD equivalent for professionals.
Thank you, Shreyasi. This really gives a great perspective. And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe, share, and like this podcast. Available on Spotify, Apple, and other platforms. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.